She wanted a break, so I hit stop.
Evelyn pitched the whole thing like it was some enlightened self-discovery experiment. "What if we just took a couple of weeks apart?" she suggested, calmly sipping her herbal tea like a therapist proposing a breakthrough. Just a brief pause, to give us space, reset, and see things more clearly. Didn't even make it halfway through that so-called break before she was plastering Instagram with rooftop selfies next to some flannel-wearing mountain man, captioned with "Vibes don't lie." So I ended that little clarity retreat before she could spin it into something more permanent. Name's Vince, 32, licensed welder by trade. I've been grinding it out on industrial sites since my early 20s. These days, I pull in around $95K a year, not too shabby for a guy spending his days in steel-toe boots, sweating behind a welding shield. I met Evelyn when I was 27, and we've been married for 3 years now. She's 30 and works reception at some downtown office. Her job mostly consists of dodging phone calls and battling with a temperamental copy machine. She earns about half of what I bring in, but that's never been a problem for me. Our money arrangement works out fine. We've got it set up around a 70-30th split. She takes care of things like groceries, utilities, and those spontaneous home upgrades, which usually translate to overpriced decorations from trendy little boutiques. I cover the mortgage. As for the house, yeah, I owned it well before we tied the knot. Bought it with inheritance money a couple of years before the wedding. And for the record, the deed's still in my name. Call it what you want. I just believe in covering my bases. The beginning of our marriage was pretty standard. The usual ups and downs, nagging over who left dishes in the sink, silent standoffs over the thermostat setting, and fantasizing about vacations that were way out of our budget. I say we fly to Europe, sip wine in Italy, dance under the Paris moon, I'd throw out there. And I say we don't drown in mortgage payments. Picture actually being able to retire, she'd shoot back. Just two young people navigating the chaos, trying to make sense of adulthood together. Now the house, yeah, that place. It's a 1950s ranch style with solid bones, nestled in a neighborhood getting overrun by smoothie bars and designer dog bakeries. I rebuilt the place from the ground up. Permits, plumbing, wiring. My weekends were swallowed by trips to hardware stores. I crafted a workshop in the garage, refinished the original floors, installed granite in the kitchen, stainless, everything. I dumped $40K and endless hours into it. Place is worth around $280K now. Not too shabby, considering it started out looking like a crime scene from an old detective show. Things were on cruise control until Amber returned. Amber? Yeah, Evelyn's college friend. You know the type. Newly single, full of pop psychology slogans like, "Don't shrink yourself and guard your peace," which loosely translates to, "Make impulsive choices and blame the stars." She rolled back into town after her tech bro husband allegedly cheated. Or maybe he just needed a break from her energy. No kids, no steady job, living off a monthly alimony check, pretending she was some enlightened, unbothered queen. Her place downtown was a shrine to aesthetic confusion. Neon signs, minimalist furniture, inspirational pillows that said, "Girl, boss, or stay wild." Weekends were a blur of wine bars, dancing, and selfies captioned "thriving," which meant she was tipsy and avoiding loneliness. My best buddy Seth met her at a cookout once and nicknamed her the life coach. We've been tight since college. Seth's a software guy, smart, allergic to BS, and fluent in sarcasm. After 10 minutes of listening to Amber drone on about soul work while flashing a purse worth more than my mortgage payment, Seth whispered, "She's a one-woman red flag convention. OSHA should shut her down." Amber always dolled up like she was about to step onto a yacht, even just to hang out. And she had a knack for dishing out unsolicited advice. Each week came with a new piece of recycled wisdom. You need to tune into your own needs, Evelyn. Men only change when they feel you pulling away. Time to step into your power. She said that while sipping the wine I paid for, in a living room I spent months renovating, sitting on a couch I assembled with a power drill and a lot of cussing. At first, I figured she was just overly friendly, but there was something off. She'd hold eye contact with me too long. Not flirty, more like "I've dreamed about you long." She laughed at my stories like I was auditioning for Netflix comedy specials. I once mentioned accidentally welding my glove to a pipe, and she nearly fell off the couch laughing. I chalked it up to her being an over-the-top extrovert. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. She'd pull up in her leased BMW like she was arriving for a red carpet, always with some overpriced bottle of wine and a new mantra borrowed from some podcast guru. She didn't have a job, didn't have a plan, Just this toxic brand of relentless optimism that could make you want to scream into a pillow. Worst part? Evelyn started treating her like some kind of life advisor. Gradually, Evelyn came home talking like she'd been programmed by one of Amber's podcasts. All these ideas about how relationships should work, none of them really her own. It's like we've gotten too predictable, she told me one night, flipping through her phone like she was scrolling a script. More like housemates than lovers. Housemates who co-sign tax returns? I said. Pretty romantic stuff. She didn't laugh. Couples that last, they challenge each other, she said like she'd practiced the line. They keep things exciting. And there it was, Amber's voice, filtered through my wife's mouth like gospel. Each time Amber tuned into another relationship podcast, I got a new wave of carefully packaged discontent. The arguments began small. Why don't you ever plan surprise date nights? Because I'm putting in 60-hour weeks and trying not to get crushed under scaffolding. Why are you always getting home so late? So we can keep paying for this overpriced mid-century fixer in a neighborhood where toast costs as much as steak. Why don't you get protective when guys hit on me at parties? Because I'm 32, not a character in some teenage drama show. At the time, I really believed we were just hitting a rough stretch. I didn't see how scripted it had become. I didn't recognize how much of what she was saying wasn't actually coming from her. Let's be real. My world was buried under steel, deadlines, and red tape. I was neck-deep in a downtown construction nightmare. A 12-story office tower, already 3 months late and hemorrhaging cash. Close to $200,000 over budget. I wasn't just a guy with a blowtorch anymore. I was wrangling subcontractors, chasing down permits, and getting barked at by corporate types in suits and shiny watches. This gig could either land me a fat year-end bonus or get me blacklisted from every trade hall in the state. I was clocking 60-hour weeks, including Saturdays. Coffee wasn't a drink anymore. It was survival fuel. My boots had seen more pavement than Evelyn's leased luxury car. But in Amber's magical world of scented candles and overpriced affirmations, the fact that I was busting my A to keep our financial house standing somehow meant I didn't care about my marriage. You couldn't invent this level of twisted logic. By the time December rolled around, arguments were happening every few days, and they always followed the same playbook. She'd blow up over something meaningless, dirty dishes, or a text I didn't answer fast enough, then spiral into, "You don't value me," acting stunned when I didn't dive headfirst into her emotional drama. I tried to respond like a grown man, calmly, logically. That only got me labeled emotionally distant, which apparently meant I hadn't sobbed during the notebook. We almost had a holiday meltdown over the Christmas tree. I came home from a grueling 12-hour shift, structural engineers breathing down my neck, inspectors treating our steel beams like heart surgery. And there she was, standing by the tree, disappointment radiating off her like heat from a stove. "You don't seem happy about the tree," she said. Not that I didn't notice it, not that I hated it. No, she was upset I didn't seem excited enough. I looked it over. Lights, ornaments, a faint pine scent mixed with holiday air freshener. "It looks good," I said, bleary-eyed, coated in drywall dust. Wrong answer. That launched a 2-day saga about how I didn't appreciate her efforts, wasn't invested in the holidays, and maybe, just maybe, I'd already checked out emotionally. Seth, as always, nailed it. "She's creating problems out of thin air," he muttered one night on my porch, sipping a beer. Probably because her recently divorced friend told her marriage should feel like a Netflix drama. You know, the trashy kind, like cheaters and custody battles. He wasn't wrong. I started staying at work longer, partly because the site demanded it. Mostly because being home felt like navigating a minefield blindfolded. Naturally, Evelyn interpreted that as more evidence I didn't care. Classic lose-lose. If I stayed late, I was avoiding her. If I came home early, I was hovering. But what I didn't know, not yet, was that Amber wasn't just offering bad advice. She was actively pushing Evelyn to look elsewhere. Then came the grenade, a Thursday evening in January. I got home around 7, not exactly late. Still had my boots on, reeking of concrete and defeat. Evelyn was sitting at the kitchen table, looking like she'd been practicing some big speech all afternoon. Her expression was a mix of forced confidence and obvious guilt, like a teenager trying to explain a dented car. She'd already eaten, which was odd. We used to wait for each other, even if dinner happened at 9 p.m. with cold noodles and reruns. That was our rhythm. I grabbed leftover Chinese from the fridge, sat down, cracked open the container. Sweet and sour pork, lukewarm and uninspiring, but it would do. "I've been reflecting on us," she said, eyes on the floor. I paused, took a bite, nodded, thinking about where this is going. Here it comes. I think maybe we should take a break. I stopped mid-chew, looked up. A break? Just for a week or two, she added quickly. To gain perspective, to remind ourselves what we love about each other. I didn't need to ask where this idea came from. I'd heard Amber whispering this nonsense for months. I could practically recite the script. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Sometimes you have to step back to move forward. Blah, blah, blah. And don't forget the part where you spend $300 on healing crystals to realign your energy. I'd watched this play out before. My buddy Jake lived it. 2 years ago, his wife asked for space to find herself. A few weeks later, she found herself in a tangled yoga pose with her instructor. Jake lost half his savings and gained a monthly child support bill that still makes him wince. He jokes that she found enlightenment, and he found a second job. So yeah, I knew this move. You want to hit pause? I asked, keeping my tone neutral like I wasn't watching our marriage fold in real time. She nodded, eyes wide with sincerity. Let's act like we're not married for a bit. See if we miss each other. See if you'll fight for us. There it was, the truth. This wasn't about introspection or self-growth. This was a staged audition for my affection. She wanted grand gestures, declarations, a desperate plea to win her back. She wanted to see if I'd break down and beg. And there she sat, my wife of 3 years, delivering a speech she'd probably rehearsed in front of the bathroom mirror, built from Amber's recycled relationship advice like it was sacred doctrine. Something inside me snapped, or maybe it just went silent. I didn't fight. I didn't plead. I didn't go full rom-com and drop to my knees professing eternal love. I simply shrugged. Okay, I said. She blinked, stunned, like I'd just answered Final Jeopardy with a fart noise. Okay, she echoed, thrown. Yeah, I said, stabbing another chunk of pork with my fork. If that's what you want. The disappointment hit her like a slap. She'd been expecting fireworks, a full breakdown. Instead, I went back to eating cold takeout like she'd just asked me to take out the trash. That was the moment I realized our marriage was probably circling the drain. Not because of the break itself, but because she seemed genuinely upset I didn't resist it. She hadn't been looking for a mature discussion. She wanted a scene, a messy emotional showdown where I begged her to stay and professed undying love through sobs and grand gestures. But I wasn't stepping onto that stage. Later that night, after she'd gone to bed, probably expecting some dramatic confession, I sent Seth a quick message. Evelyn wants a marriage timeout. Half a minute later, his reply, LOL. Let me guess. That brainwave come from her self-help friend? Bingo. What's your move? Letting her go through with it. See where it lands. Smart. Nothing says love like testing it with manufactured separation plans. We hammered out the terms that same night because, nothing screams romance like drawing up a temporary disengagement agreement. 2 weeks pretending we weren't married. She'd stay with Amber. No chatting unless it was urgent or related to the house. At the end of 14 days, we'd evaluate like our relationship was some sort of software pilot. The next morning, she packed as if she were headed for a minimalist retreat. Work clothes, casual wear, and an entire shelf's worth of skincare. I helped her carry the bags to her Civic. She didn't say much as she backed out of the driveway, just offered a strange, uncertain wave. I returned it. Happy soul-searching. As soon as the taillights disappeared, the quiet settled in, but not the crushing, shame-filled kind. This was calm, like my home belonged to me again. No overpowering perfume cloud greeting me at the door. No lectures about emotional responsibility because I forgot to toss leftovers. No background commentary about toxic masculinity when I put on ESPN. For the first time in months, I exhaled in my own living room. That evening, I ordered a large pepperoni pizza, cracked open a Coke, and watched the entire Predator trilogy uninterrupted. No one pausing every 20 minutes to analyze how Hollywood ruins society with hyper-masculine heroes. It was absolute bliss. Seth came by that weekend with food from our go-to Thai spot, the one we'd been hitting since college. The man is nothing if not loyal to friends and spicy noodles. He dropped the plastic bags on the counter with a smirk. I brought back up spring rolls. You look like you haven't eaten anything green since she walked out. Guilty, I said. Unless the bell peppers on last night's pizza count. He cracked open his laptop, and we spent hours setting up our fantasy football league for next season, something I hadn't had the headspace to think about in ages. buried under project deadlines, thermostat arguments, and endless unsolicited wisdom from a bleach blonde disaster who treats that podcast like it's gospel. So, Seth asked, peeking over his screen, how's temporary bachelor life treating you? I leaned back in the chair. Honestly, not bad. Watched 3 hours of football yesterday without getting psychoanalyzed for enjoying it. Seth nearly spit out his pad thai. Wait, she actually said sports were emotionally repressive? Among other gems, I said, nodding. Apparently caring about the Cowboys' playoff chances meant I was avoiding inner emotional healing, he cackled. God forbid you enjoy a game instead of processing childhood trauma in a journal. That same weekend, I did something wild. Something that would have sent Amber into a TikTok spiral of faux inspiration. I reviewed our finances, really reviewed them. I pulled every document, joint accounts, credit card statements, her student loan info, the ones I'd been helping to pay off out of goodwill and a belief in shared responsibility. Like a fool, I opened a spreadsheet and got to work tracking every asset, every liability, every cent that had gone toward what I thought was a future. Turns out, we had $35,000 in savings and $15,000 in checking, jointly held. Respectable. Meanwhile, her student loans had barely budged, still sitting pretty at $28,000. All for a marketing degree that got her a $45K a year desk job answering phones and arguing with the break room coffee machine. For 2 years, I'd been quietly adding $400 a month to those payments, thinking I was investing in us. Apparently, what I should have been doing was planning romantic surprises to keep the spark alive. Then there was the house. I went through every renovation, every nail, light fixture, and late-night Home Depot run. She'd contributed maybe $8,000 total over the years, mostly for materials and Pinterest-inspired appliances. The labor? All me. Weekends, sweat, frustration, and power tools. My own tally came out to over $32,000, excluding the blisters and sanity lost along the way. By Monday, I was feeling strangely motivated, so I gave Dave a call. Old friend, now a lawyer. I wasn't filing anything, just wanted to understand the terrain. A casual check-in, just in case. Dave laid out the Texas rules, separate property, community assets, division scenarios, riveting stuff. The good news? The house was protected. Bought before marriage, still in my name. Improvements were a gray area, but since I'd covered the labor and cost, I had a solid claim to most of the increase in value. Not exactly cause for celebration, but it gave me peace of mind. By the time that first week ended, I had made a few strategic moves. Shifted half our joint savings into a personal account. Totally legal, fully accessible, no funny business. I also rerouted my direct deposit so future paychecks went straight into my own bank, not the shared one. Her response? One lone message. That's it? One text in 7 days? Hope you're still thinking about us. I showed it to Seth. What's that supposed to mean? I asked. He didn't even look up from his phone. It means she expected you to be a crying mess by now. Probably thought you'd be planning some candlelit dinner and begging her to come home. Meanwhile, you're the most chill you've been in ages. That's got to be throwing her off. He wasn't wrong. By the 10th day, it didn't feel like a pause anymore. It felt like a vacation I didn't know I needed. And right on cue, Amber decided it was her time to shine. Apparently, 2 weeks was plenty for her to start inching her way into the spotlight. That Tuesday afternoon, a text popped up from a number I didn't recognize. Hey, how are you holding up? Amber. For the first time ever, she was texting me directly. We'd never messaged one-on-one. Not during holidays, barbecues, or the countless times she showed up empty-handed and left with leftovers. And now suddenly she's playing nurse with a smartphone. I kept it neutral. Doing all right. Still getting used to it all. Which, frankly, was the understatement of the year. Evelyn's best friend was circling like a hawk over something injured. She replied instantly, Yeah, I get it. Evelyn's been a wreck lately. Maybe we could meet for coffee just to talk? Oh, sure. Because what better way to support your friend's marriage than by cozying up to her husband over cappuccino? Especially when you're the one who lit the match in the first place. But instead of shutting it down, I let it play out. I was curious, and that curiosity had its hands on a gas can. Yeah, maybe that's a good idea. We met up Thursday evening at a Starbucks near her high-rise. One of those fancy ones that sells more cake pops than coffee. She walked in dressed like she was headed to a rooftop party, not grabbing lattes. Black dress so tight it could have passed as paint, full face of makeup, and enough perfume to trigger airport security. She leaned in to grab her drink like it was trying to escape, And the neckline on that dress? Let's just say it was more ladies' night than latte run. I feel awful about everything, she said, sliding into the chair like she was auditioning for desperate ex-wives of the suburbs. You two were so great together. Interesting perspective, considering she spent the last 8 months whispering into Evelyn's ear about how uninspired we'd become. I mean, were we really that great? She went on. The fights. She's just confused. She doesn't know what she wants. Then she reached out and placed her hand over mine. Long red nails, the kind that screamed table-flipping enthusiast. They probably cost a small fortune and a half day of her life. I let the contact linger for a second, just to appreciate the absurdity of it all. Then gently pulled my hand away like I'd remembered I don't let snakes slither across my wrist. It's been a lot, I said, sounding like I was talking about traffic delays, not the wreckage of my marriage. If you ever need someone, she said in a tone better suited for candlelit rooms and whispered secrets, I'm here, day or night. Great. A crisis hotline for emotionally confused husbands with cleavage and bad intentions. She kept talking for nearly an hour about how Evelyn never truly appreciated me, how I deserved better, how things would have been different with someone else. Yeah, sure. Different like marble countertops and a subscription to luxury wellness retreats. When it was finally time to part ways, she wrapped me in a hug that had no business happening at a Starbucks. Full body, too long, too tight, like she wanted to leave a signature scent, and maybe a little regret. This was really nice. We should do it again soon, she said, like we were building something and not sinking deeper into dysfunction. I got into my car and immediately dialed Seth. Man, I said, you're not going to believe this. Let me guess, he shot back. The relationship guru's already planning your honeymoon. She basically threw herself at me, I replied. Dressed like a nightclub waitress, touching my hand, talking about how Evelyn doesn't deserve me. Seth snorted. She's like a shark with lip gloss. I'd bet she pitched this whole break idea just to open the door for herself. This is like textbook sabotage. He wasn't exaggerating. What do I do? I asked. Act clueless, he said. Let her think she's the clever one while you keep receipts. This mess is about to get cinematic. He was right. Things escalated quickly. Over the next few days, Amber cranked the clinginess into overdrive, texting daily like she was managing my emotional wellness. She started suggesting we meet again, sending filtered selfies with captions like, thinking of you during this tough time. One even came from the gym, leggings, perfect lighting, no sweat. Nothing says support like a fitness thirst trap. Then came the Instagram posts, a moody photo of her with a glass of wine, eating alone again. Another poolside pic in a bikini, afternoon self-care. Each caption was vague enough to be innocent, but suggestive enough to leave breadcrumbs. It didn't feel like social media anymore. It felt like a marketing campaign. Seth was eating it up. Look at this, he said, laughing as he waved his phone. She just posted, you are loved, you are enough. You'd think she worked for Hallmark's underground emotional manipulation division. I laughed. What's next? A scented card and pressed flower in the mail? Yep, he nodded, with inspirational glitter quotes. I didn't take the bait, not completely. I responded just enough to keep her thinking I was broken, possibly receptive. A quick like here, a thanks there, enough to paint myself as sad but salvageable. Someone she could fix with enough support, attention, and protein smoothies. Then came her big move. Friday night, I got the message. I have something to tell you, but I don't know if I should. What is it? Can we meet? I really shouldn't text this. Of course not. Wouldn't want screenshots floating around if the plan goes south. For this kind of betrayal, you need a real-time performance. We met again at the same Starbucks, her suggestion. She walked in like someone on edge, eyes darting to her phone like it had wronged her. I feel awful about this, she said, voice shaky like she was about to confess to a minor crime. But I think you need to know what's going on. She paused, like she was building up to something life-altering. If a dramatic soundtrack had started playing, I wouldn't have been surprised. Evelyn's been seeing another man, and just like that, she dropped the bombshell, delivering it with the flair of a reality show contestant revealing a plot twist. I gave her just the right amount of calculated disbelief. What are you talking about? His name is Shane, she replied, as if reading from a report. They met at a conference last month. I've seen them together, and trust me, it's more than friendly. More than friendly. The kind of phrasing people use when they want to sound restrained while tossing a grenade. Shane was, apparently, a 30-something marketing exec from Austin. Divorced, BMW driver, naturally, tech industry guy. The type who probably gives talks about disruption and poses next to whiteboards filled with meaningless buzzwords. "You're sure?" I asked. "I saw them out at dinner yesterday," she said, voice lowered like she was sharing classified intel. "They were close, and she's been lying about where she goes when she leaves the apartment." Amber reached out and placed her hand on mine, trying to play the role of supportive friend, though her touch said, "Consider me the upgrade." "I hate to be the one to say this," she whispered, "but you needed to hear it." Message received. Dump Evelyn, and Amber's already prepped her application for the promotion. "I can't believe she'd do that," I said, layering my voice with heartbreak like I was auditioning for a sad indie film. "You don't deserve this," she said, gently squeezing my hand like she was delivering the final scene in a Nicholas Sparks drama. "You should be with someone who truly sees your worth." That night, I did what any mildly tech-savvy husband with a suspicion radar would do. I checked the devices Evelyn had left behind. Her iPad was still at the apartment and by some miracle of laziness, still signed in. Apple's synced ecosystem made it easy. Her iMessages were populating across all platforms. It was betrayal, neatly time-stamped and alphabetized. What I found? 3 weeks' worth of messages with this Shane character. It began innocently enough, chatting about clients, branding issues, mundane work chatter. But by the second week, it had taken a turn. She was confiding in him about our marriage, saying she felt overlooked, underappreciated, that he made her feel seen. Soon it wasn't just emotional. The messages became explicitly romantic, and then downright graphic. Late-night flirty texts, planned meetups, talk of chemistry that sounded straight out of a dollar store romance novel. And yes, photos, way more revealing than I ever wanted or needed to see again. The kicker? The timestamps matched up with our break, including right after she sent me that sweet little message about taking space and thinking about us. Yeah, apparently her version of clarity involved room service and lingerie at a downtown hotel. I screen captured everything. Every message. Every eye-roll-inducing emoji. Every selfie that came with captions like thinking of you while she was in a robe at the Omni. Backed it all up to the cloud like I was archiving digital evidence for trial. 47 messages. A dozen pictures. Several voice notes I couldn't bring myself to play because I wasn't ready to hear her whisper endearments meant for someone else. Then I decided to check our shared credit card just to complete the picture. And there it was. 3 dinners at upscale places I'd never even heard of. Names like Meridian and the Capitol Grill. You know, restaurants where the betrayal comes garnished with microgreens and a $90 wine pairing. And then I saw it. The final nail. A charge from the Omni Hotel. 2 nights ago, 1 room, $280. She told Amber she was running to Target. Target. Who cheats and uses a Target run as their excuse? Yeah, babe, just grabbing paper towels and a side of infidelity. I called Seth. Got it, I said. Got what? He asked. She's been hooking up with some tech bro from Austin. No way. Oh yeah, I've got texts, receipts, the hotel bill. She practically documented the whole thing like a vacation blog. So let me get this straight, he said. Amber encourages Evelyn to take a break. Evelyn runs straight into Shane's arms, and then Amber comes crawling to you pretending to be your emotional support animal? Pretty much. She thinks I'm going to be so wrecked I'll fall right into her arms. Classic, he muttered. Break the marriage. Offer herself as the replacement, like trading in a totaled car for something that still rattles, just less loudly. She's about to find out that's not how this story ends. Monday morning, I called Dave, my lawyer buddy. Dave, I've got ironclad evidence of an affair, I told him. Texts, photos, hotel receipts, the whole saga. Perfect, he said. Bring it all in. Let's get to work. He spent an hour combing through it, sipping coffee like he was reading a particularly bad novel. Unmoved, professional. These messages are solid, he finally said. The timeline holds up. And all of this was collected legally. So what's the situation? You'll keep the house. It's premarital property. You're looking at 60 to 65% of shared assets and no spousal support. Her affair waives that right under Texas law. Confirmed? Absolutely. She forfeited a lot when she chose this path. How long to file everything? 3 days, he said. I'll make it airtight. Those 3 days? Easily some of the strangest in my life. I showed up at work like nothing had changed, managed a construction site that, by some miracle, was finally running ahead of schedule. I came home to a peaceful house, reheated leftovers, and watched Top Chef reruns without anyone rolling their eyes at me. For once, things were actually quiet, and I liked it. I kept up the grieving husband charade around Amber like I was gunning for an Emmy. I let her console me about the devastating revelation she had so thoughtfully delivered. Let her pat my shoulder and wax poetic about how cruel Evelyn had been to both of us. "She didn't just betray you," Amber said, sounding like a villain in a low-budget soap. "She betrayed me too." "Oh, for sure," I replied. "She was a terrible friend," she sighed, eyes wide with shared victimhood. "I just don't get it," Amber continued, twirling her latte like it had wronged her. "After everything you did for her, some people just don't see the good in front of them." "Exactly," I said with my best impression of a man freshly burned, but finally seeing the light. "Maybe this had to happen. Maybe now I know who she really is." Amber leaned in, eyes soft, fingertips brushing mine across the table like we were in a slow-motion Hallmark scene. "And maybe now I know who you really are too." Later, when I told Seth, he nearly choked on his bagel. "She actually said that?" he gasped. "Maybe now I know who you really are? Is she writing a romance novel, or just quoting from one?" He clutched his chest like he'd been mortally wounded. "Next she'll be talking about soulmates, universal timing, and Saturn in retrograde doing backflips through her love chakra." By Thursday, it was time to bring in the professionals. I hired a process server. No drama, no grand gesture, just clean delivery. She got served at work. No yelling in the driveway, no viral moment. Just a stack of official documents and a look on her face, I'm told, that landed somewhere between surprised raccoon and caught stealing from the company fridge. The envelope included everything: screenshots, texts, a tasteful selection of photos, and the grand finale: a hotel bill for $280. Because nothing says, "We're just taking space," like robes, champagne, and dessert in bed at the Omni. Less than an hour later, she called. Caller ID. Evelyn. I braced myself. "What the heck is this?" she snapped. "Oh, that?" I said calmly. "Those are divorce papers. You'll notice the attachments: proof of cheating, financial misuse, lies. All the classics." "We were on a break," she cried. "We were supposed to work through things." I almost laughed. "You worked something out, all right, just not with me. Hope the Omni was worth it. I hear the truffle fries are fantastic." Silence. Dense, crystal-clear silence. I could hear her trying to form a sentence. "How did you—" "Your iPad was still connected to iCloud," I explained. Every message, every emoji, every steamy exchange with Shane landed right in my lap like a bad romance novel. "You read my private conversations? She really thought that angle would work? When your private chats sync to our shared devices, they stop being private. Or like open mic night." She tried a new angle. "It was just texts, and that hotel? That was just a hypothetical plan." "Sure," I said. "So, you accidentally fell into a full-blown affair and racked up hotel points in the process." Then came the meltdown. "You can't just throw away our marriage because of this." "I didn't throw anything away. You did. The moment you decided to cozy up with Shane while I played house alone." And that's when she finally cracked. "You know what? I'm glad it happened. At least Shane cares. He talks to me. He takes me places. He buys me things. With your joint credit card or whatever. And he has a real career, not just whatever it is you do that leaves you covered in sweat and grime every night." Ah, there it was. After 3 years of marriage, the mask was off. My job, the one paying for her car, her Pilates classes, and the Peloton she used twice, was beneath her. All that support she claimed to give, apparently conditional. Shane's already talking about helping me get a position at his company in Austin, where people are actually going places. "Well," I said, "let's hope Shane knows he's hiring someone with a love for luxury and a resume full of freeloading. He values me." "Sure, especially when I'm covering his date night receipts. True love right there." She hung up. When I told Seth, he couldn't breathe from laughing so hard. Literal tears running down his face. "She really said your job was grunt work?" He wheezed. "You've been paying her bills with that grunt work for years. Apparently, building things with your hands isn't classy enough for someone who thinks brunch counts as a personality. Now she's making plans to move to Austin with Shane. Because nothing screams fresh start like high rent, tech bros, and overpriced kombucha. It's like she's rebooting her life with no idea how to operate the controls. The divorce itself was a 4-month circus. 4 months. She tried everything: emotional mistreatment, financial hardship, misalignment of horoscopes, you name it. I halfway expected her to bring a psychic to testify on her behalf. She kept insisting the break gave her freedom to explore. You know, while I was paying the mortgage and she was exploring hotel suites with her new philosopher king. At first, she claimed it was all emotional, nothing physical. That is, until the receipts surfaced. Then she slipped up. Something about room service and the wine that changed everything. Her argument? She was confused, influenced, vulnerable. By who? The minibar? Didn't matter. Texas law doesn't care about chakras or confusion. The judge took one look at the documentation and said, "Yep, adultery. And that means she gets less." Her lawyer, a self-described champion of women's justice, looked like she'd swallowed a lemon when the topic of asset division came up. I support women's rights, absolutely, but not when you try to plead for half a house you've never lifted a finger to maintain, especially after spending weekends at the Hampton Inn with Shane and a bottle of $69 champagne. The real fireworks started when the lawyer had to explain the law, that adultery changes the equation, that she couldn't just walk away with 50% of everything, but Evelyn? Oh, she still wanted half the house, half, like she had installed a single cabinet, laid one tile, or even painted a wall. When her attorney gently broke the news that she might not walk away with half, Evelyn erupted like a volcano on reality TV. Think high-pitched yelling, flailing arms, and the kind of meltdown that would trend in seconds if caught on camera. She was promptly asked to leave the law office. Temporarily banned, actually. And there she went, storming out with a venti caramel macchiato in one hand and a printed copy of her own lies in the other. A real vision of grace under pressure. While Evelyn was busy torching her own reputation, Amber played the part of a slow-burning strategist, like she trained at Langley. Her texts rolled in like scheduled programming. "Amber, just checking in. How's your heart holding up?" "Amber, you've got to prioritize your peace, Vince." "Amber, I'm here anytime to talk, vent, or escape the chaos." Escape? What is this, a jailbreak? Every message was a carefully balanced cocktail of sympathy and low-key seduction. She had to be drafting and editing them like she was submitting an entry to the National Book Awards. Meanwhile, Evelyn never spent 5 seconds asking how my day went. "She's like a scavenger circling a carcass," Seth quipped. I lifted my mug. "Bet she's got an app counting down the days until my divorce is official." I gave her just enough attention to keep the bait working. Grabbed coffee with her a couple of times. Sat through Oscar-worthy performances. The loyal friend, the collateral damage, the empathic soul who just happens to be single. "She hurt us both," Amber whispered, as if we'd both survived a plane crash. She'd show up like she was auditioning for a music video, glide into the coffee shop like she owned stock in it, then spend the next hour congratulating herself for being there for me. "I feel so responsible," she once confessed, her voice trembling just enough to flirt with a tear. "If I hadn't told you about Shane, maybe things could have been repaired." Right, because the affair she likely helped cultivate was a secret she nobly exposed out of moral duty, like she wasn't busy tagging Evelyn in "live your truth" memes and fueling the fire behind the scenes. "You did the right thing," I said, bottling every ounce of sarcasm I had. "I needed to know the facts." "I just hate seeing you suffer," she sighed, fingers inching across the table to touch mine. "You should be with someone who values you." She lingered, gaze locked, then laid it on thick. "And when you're ready, when this mess is behind you, I'll be waiting. However you need." She might as well have slid over a laminated flyer. Amber Waters, emotional transition coach, open 24/7, no strings, no depth. When I told Seth, he nearly spilled his drink. She actually said, "However you need"? What is she? A human comfort package? Does she include a tune-up and a 2-year emotional warranty? The divorce was finalized in May. I retained the house, my retirement savings, and about 65% of our shared assets. Evelyn got her car, some boxes of personal stuff, and a mountain of student debt. No spousal support either. Sleeping around with Shane kind of disqualified her from cashing in. The house alone was valued at $280,000, with a mortgage of $180,000 still on it. I'd done the heavy lifting. Floor installations, paint jobs, even built a deck from scratch. That sweat equity earned me roughly $100,000 in value. Add in $32,000 from joint accounts and stocks, and I came out with a decent cushion. Evelyn walked away with around $18,000, a worn-out Civic, and some blurred memories of hotel breakfasts with Shane. But could she walk away with dignity? Of course not. Even at the final signing, she threw a fit about how unfair it all was. "You're punishing me for listening to my heart," she snapped, like she'd just wrapped a rom-com shoot. I didn't flinch. Following your heart doesn't mean charging hotel rooms to our shared credit card while cozying up to another guy. "Shane and I have something real," she snarled. "Something you could never understand." "Oh, I get it," I replied. "It cost us $280 and 3 dinners. Her lawyer had to put a literal hand on her arm to keep her from lunging across the table like a caffeinated lemur. Part of me was flattered. "A classic case of wanting the cake and demolishing it too," Seth mumbled beside me. The same guy who once tried to bake a frozen pizza without taking off the wrapper. Still, once the paperwork was final, Amber invited me to celebrate over dinner at one of those uptight restaurants downtown. She picked the place, Meridian. You know the kind, where entrees are arranged like abstract art and taste like lost potential. Waiters act like they're doing you a favor by existing. She seemed surprised when I accepted the invite. Probably thought I'd be too drained to play along. But sometimes ambition smells like designer perfume. Amber showed up looking like $1,000,000. Designer dress, flawless hair, manicured claws, and that predatory grin. She came expecting to seal the deal she'd been working for months. "I'm just so impressed with how strong you've been," she said sweetly over a dish that looked like gourmet seafoam. "You really held it together." "I had solid support," I offered. "I was honored to be part of it," she beamed, sliding her hand over mine like she was claiming victory. "You deserved honesty, and now we don't have to pretend anymore." When I looked at her, all I saw was artifice, a flawless layer of makeup, a designer dress screaming for attention, and that sharp practice smile she probably rehearsed in the mirror a dozen times. No butterflies, just a cold, sinking wave of revulsion. Definitely not the reaction she was counting on. "Amber, I've got something to say." She lit up like I dropped to one knee. "Yeah? What is it?" "You're the reason my marriage imploded." Her jaw practically hit the table. "What? No way. I was helping you see Evelyn for who she really was." I took a sip of overpriced designer water and shook my head. "No, you were actively pushing us apart so you could take her place. You nudged her toward infidelity and then ran to me like some twisted savior." For the first time ever, her bronzer wasn't enough to cover the flush draining from her face. "That's not true. I wouldn't do that." "But you did. You pushed her into destroying her relationship so you could swoop in afterward." "I cared about both of you," she mumbled. "I didn't want you to get hurt even worse." "You weren't protecting me. You were chasing your own agenda. You saw an opening and jumped." I stood slowly, placing 2 crisp $20 bills on the fancy white linen like I was tipping a magician who blew the trick. "The saddest thing," I said, sliding my chair back like I was exiting stage left, "is that you genuinely believe I'd want someone capable of something like this." Amber blinked, stunned, as I started to leave. "But we haven't even ordered," she said, like the missed dinner was the real tragedy here. "No overpriced scallops tonight," I said, pausing just long enough. "I'm heading home, alone, to the house I kept, because I was smart enough not to trust people like you." She opened her mouth again, probably with some speech she'd rehearsed. I wasn't staying for the show. "What about us?" she asked, still living in a fantasy. I looked at her, seated there in that ridiculously expensive dress, trying to hold together her version of reality while the truth started to dawn. "There is no us. There never was," I said, twisting the knife with surgical precision. "You're toxic. You wreck lives like it's a hobby." Still blinking, still processing. "But I helped you," she insisted, hand to chest like the victim. "I told you the truth about Evelyn." I laughed out loud. "You told me about an affair you basically choreographed." Her eye twitched. "You created the mess, then tried to be the cleanup crew." "That's not helping. That's sabotage in a Hallmark disguise. And I wasn't even finished yet." I had one final card left, and it was glossy. An hour before dinner, I'd texted Evelyn. "Amber says she's got something important to confess about Shane. Said you need to hear it. Hook, line, and sinker." 10 minutes into the meal, Evelyn burst through the front door like she was about to press charges. Amber's voice cracked an octave as she turned. "What is she doing here?" "Ladies," I said with mock elegance, "there's a conversation you two need to have. I'll leave you to it." I straightened my jacket like I was exiting a spy film and strolled out, but not before dialing Seth. "Hey," I said into the phone. "You're going to want to get down to Meridian right now." "What's going on?" "Our life coach," I replied with a grin, "is about to get her client feedback." Inside, Evelyn's voice was already spiking like a fire drill. "You pushed me toward Shane!" Amber snapped back. "I was trying to help," she shouted, voice cracking. "Help?" Evelyn laughed, sharp and cold. "You sabotaged my marriage to steal my husband." By the time I reached the parking lot, the show had kicked off. Through the windows, I could see them both standing, arms flying like storm flags. Diners were frozen, phones were out. Seth pulled up and leaned out the window. "Dude, they're throwing down!" He jumped out and joined me, watching as Evelyn shouted, "You planned this for months! He just turned you down, and now you're spiraling." That's when Amber launched her water glass. It shattered on the wall just behind Evelyn. Evelyn retaliated by grabbing Amber's high-end purse and upending it like it owed her money. Seth whistled. "Oh, it's on," he said, already calling someone. "Yes, I'd like to report a classy brawl at Meridian, downtown." Inside, Amber suddenly lunged like a linebacker. Evelyn grabbed her hair, and they both went down, flipping half the table in the process. Glass clattered, wine flew. A woman screamed. Diners scattered like pigeons hit with a firecracker. I glanced at Seth. "Should we maybe step in?" "Step in," he said, still watching. "This is the most satisfying thing I've seen all year. Let him go." The restaurant manager burst out of the kitchen like he'd trained for this, arms wide like a SWAT negotiator. "Ladies, please," he said. Amber wasn't having it. She shoved him like he'd insulted her ancestors and charged Evelyn again. Evelyn, never one to lose dramatic ground, picked up a breadbasket, focaccia and all, and chucked it like she was aiming for Olympic discus gold. It hit Amber square in the face. Audible gasp from nearby tables. Glorious. When the cops finally rolled in, probably after finishing their coffee break, both women were on the ground, hair wild, makeup smeared like war paint, shrieking like they'd just been cast in a budget horror film. Inside, the restaurant staff was doing their best to pretend like this chaos was just another Tuesday lunch rush, not a full-blown viral meltdown in progress. Several diners, bless their opportunistic hearts, had their phones out like they were streaming live from the front row at a festival. Meanwhile, the two police officers exchanged that defeated glance reserved for men who've survived one too many domestic disturbances. "Ladies," one of them announced with the deadpan tone of a guy whose patience expired last week, "you're both being arrested for public disturbance and assault." Seth and I stood in the parking lot, watching the circus unfold like it was a reality TV finale we didn't know we'd been cast in. The officers cuffed both of them and walked them to separate cruisers, but even then, they wouldn't stop shrieking. They kept hurling insults through rolled-up windows like dueling contestants from rival dating shows. They spent the night in county lockup. Apparently, dramatic monologues and flying tableware aren't protected under some high-emotions legal loophole. "Honestly," Seth said, wiping tears from his face, "that was an absolute masterpiece." The next morning, my phone rang. Collect call from, you guessed it, Evelyn, reporting live from the local jail. "You did this," she snapped before I could even say hello. "Really?" I said, already grinning. "And how exactly is your restaurant brawl with Amber my doing?" "You planned it. You set the whole thing up." "Nope. I just told the truth about what went down between us. What you two did after that, that was all you. I wasn't even inside when you both went full cage match at Olive Grove. You got us arrested." "Correction," I said. "You got arrested because you acted like a maniac in public. Own it." But of course, she wasn't ready to surrender her imaginary crown. "You need to bail me out. I'm your wife. Ex-wife as of yesterday. And I'm not lifting a finger." "I don't have anyone else. Shane's ignoring my calls." "Sounds like a you problem," I said, crunching on a tortilla chip. "You can't just leave me here." "Oh, I absolutely can." The call barely lasted 3 minutes before she hung up in frustration. Later, I told Seth about it. He nearly fell out of his chair laughing. "She's got nerve, I'll give her that." In the end, both of them had to pay fines for disturbing the peace. Evelyn got stuck with an $800 tab to cover broken dishes, wine glasses, and possibly therapy for the poor host who had to witness the spectacle. Naturally, the internet did what it does best. The entire incident got uploaded to TikTok, everything from the thrown focaccia to the handcuffs. The post was labeled #divorce drama and hit 80,000 views in under a week. Top comment: "When keeping it real backfires." 500 likes. Evelyn moved back in with her parents in the suburbs of Dallas. Last I heard, she took another corporate job making the same money, only now she had a mugshot and viral fame as souvenirs. As for Shane, he dumped her fast after realizing he'd been a pawn in her marital demolition project, and he wound up a footnote in her TikTok shame spiral. The kicker? She kept showing up at his office trying to rekindle things. Eventually, they had to get building security to keep her out. From office flirt to full-blown restraining order candidate. Amber, of course, kept trying to contact me. One day she'd be sobbing apologies. The next, she'd rage text about how I ruined everything. I finally blocked her after she appeared at my doorstep on a Saturday morning, ranting like a preacher with a vendetta. "You're punishing me for being a loyal friend!" she screamed. "No, Amber," I replied. "I'm punishing myself for thinking you ever were. But the best part, the house finally feels like mine. I got rid of all the dumb throw pillows that served no purpose other than nightly relocation. The overpriced candles that no one was ever allowed to light, tossed, bought a legit sectional, a 65-inch TV, and converted the guest room into a home office. Turns out sometimes the trash takes itself out.